Good evening, everybody. This is Monica Guzman coming to you again on a weekend, really late night on what's turned out to be a pretty crazy sports night. I was supposed to come on half an hour ago, but I didn't realize everything that was going on tonight. And so, kind of exciting. Um, I'm just a sports fan at heart. Like, I love sports. So I didn't catch any of the action from tonight's USA versus Mexico game, and I didn't watch the Jake Paul, Logan Paul, they're brothers, right? Versus Floyd fight. But it sounds like that was pretty exciting too. And so tonight I'm going to be talking about the opioid epidemic here in the USA, um, the statistics end of it. And so, but I want to get into the sports a little bit just because this is my thing. I definitely want to see the ratings in the next few days for this USA Mexico soccer game. I don't know what channels carried it. I imagine one of the Spanish channels here on USA soil carried it. And then I don't know how it was broadcast on the English side, but I definitely want to see these ratings. The game was interesting, apparently. Look, I'm following along on Twitter, and just the logo that the United States men's, what is this? United States men's national team has, I mean, really. And then it's very, everyone in the soccer world knows about Mexican fans in Mexico. Games. They are passionate. They have their chance. And, the thing about it is Mexicans are still Mexican. Mexicans are natural conservatives due to the Catholic background. And so, yeah, there is no tolerance for the degeneracy that's happening here on American soil because Americans don't run America anymore. And I personally don't apologize for it either, in the sense that the reason why there's so much degeneracy on American soil is because Americans no longer run the country. Americans don't run the government. Americans don't run any of the related agencies. The courts are packed, right, with people who wouldn't have voted for Trump. The universities are not run by Americans. Professional sports isn't run by Americans. And so that's why there's such widespread degeneracy across these institutions. Boxing in Americans, making you feel bad for having Christian values. So again, Mexicans don't have the level of degeneracy that is occurring here in the United States. Obviously, Mexico has its problems. The two things that plague the country are poverty and violence. And we know that some of the violence has been fueled because the arms industry in America isn't run by Americans. So therefore, there has been such a proliferation of guns that get lost. Then they get sold on the black market, and they end up in the hands of the cartels. They end up in the hands of terrorists. They end up in the hands of America's enemies. This thing with Israel, a lot of, or a few prominent people on the right aptly pointed out that whatever was going on over there in the Middle East was actually both sides who had funds from the United States. That's just the level of stupid that we're living in right now. And so Mexico, yes, absolutely has its issues, but Mexican men are still very much machismo. There is no tolerance for degeneracy that is allowed to that has become mainstream in America. So I'm reading through the comments and it's just, I mean, okay, fly your beta flags. Like it's just we're living in a level of stupid that is just off the charts, and I'm so glad that Americans are starting to push back against just the stupidity that we're living in right now. Um, there's so much going on with like the AMC stock. GameStop is still in the game. And so there was a person who wants to lead on the right who called the GameStop squeeze a distraction. And I 100% disagree with that. And I question that person's motives. And that's why we've got to go decentralized all the way. We can't allow one person to dictate the agenda for the rest of us. It's pockets of people deciding for themselves what their immediate neighborhood, area, region, locality requires, not some child in a suit in Chicago somewhere. Decentralize, do what you got to do for your neighborhood, for your household, keep it local. And so Mexicans don't apologize for rejecting degeneracy. And that's why, again, I'm one of those people, Mexican by blood, but American by birth. And so I'm one of those, again, I go back, I had a very interesting college experience, and I am a very much a ni de aquí ni de allá. So I'm 100% Mexican, but I'm not 100% American either. So I toe the line between both cultures and interests, and I've chosen that we have to push back in America against the degeneracy being pushed on Americans by non-Americans. And we've got to stabilize the USA. By stabilizing the USA, we definitely help stabilize Mexico, and then we definitely start stabilizing the rest of the Western world, namely Europe would be the next one. Um, so America, I mean, whatever. A couple of betas are upset that Mexicans chant, dude. Go put your glasses on and sit in front of your screen and cry, I guess. Like, whatever. Whatever, right? And so that's that. Again, I definitely want to see those ratings tomorrow. Then this Logan fight, uh, I was following along on Twitter as well, and he made it through the 8 rounds. I think there were people out there that believed he was going to get KO pretty quickly. So good for him. Floyd is supposed to be pretty awesome. I guess this fight was more of a charity thing. So I guess there was no winner. So it was, I don't know if Floyd's going to claim that he wasn't going in 100%, but for what everyone's calling a YouTuber to outlast this or to go toe to toe, whatever Floyd was playing at is still pretty impressive. So definitely good for him. I think tonight I'm going to wrap up far more quickly than I have the other streams. We'll see how it goes. I got a little distracted with all the sports stuff going on tonight. Usually it's Memorial Day weekend that's got like tons of, I mean, it's just sports, 3 days of sports, 24/7. And so to have this big sports Sunday was a little surprising. I wasn't anticipating this. And then on top of it, today is the 77th anniversary of the storming of Normandy. And it's some of these things are just, they fall into place. I've been talking about how Americans left their country definitely by the 1960s. Americans lost control of their government. You lost control of your agencies. America became far more bureaucratic at that point, and that's just when the degeneracy started to really set in. And then here we are with Normandy, celebrating the or remembering the anniversary of Normandy. So World War II, I looked up some of the numbers as far as the American population went, and World War II, 3% of the American population lost. So 3% of Americans died as a result of World War II. Either the majority obviously died somewhere in combat, and then I think there were a couple of thousands others that lost their lives. Maybe they were non-combat personnel or something, and maybe they happened to be near the battle sites or everything that was going on. But about 400, so World War II claimed 420,000 American lives, the majority men. Um, so I can start to connect these things based on historical events. So why did Americans lose control of America in the 1960s? Because your men were killed off by two world wars. 420,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but when you think about the male population today, enough alphas did pass away, where what we've got right now are vengeful, short men, a lot of non-Americans, a lot of nerds, waging a war against the alphas that are left. Again, I go back to watching some of these games with these guys who happen to have the privilege to wear MLB uniforms and get paid to do it. And they're sitting in these booths criticizing your mad bums for being big and strong. It's like, okay, loser. Mad Bum has 3 World Series rings. One of them he basically won by himself. Get over it and move, step aside. Like, it just, again, we're living in this era of the country's being run by non-Americans, but it's not just non-Americans, it's people who have health issues. I've started, so doing this video stuff, the camera sees you differently than you see yourself, and then you've got to worry about the lighting, and you've got to do your makeup, and you've got to do your hair. And so I realize how damaging it is to those who have a very thin skin. And then I started to think about, okay, so the beauty industry is always going to survive. During the lockdown, I had to make a couple of trips to the what are they called? Drugstores, I guess. And I had to pick up a lot of do-it-yourself beauty items that I had never purchased before because I there's some things I leave to the professionals. I have a favorite place where I get my manicures and pedicures, and they are very reasonably priced. So I've never given myself a manicure or pedicure. Sure, I've changed my nail polish color or um, shortened my nails myself, but I've never had to go all in and do the whole thing by myself. And so um, there are sorry, I lost my train of thought here. So let me go ahead and start rewinding back. So tonight, again, I'm talking about the opioid epidemic, and it's again a lot of what we're living in right now is has been brought on to Americans by non-Americans. The pharmac this so the psychology field stems from Germany, right? But we know that there were questionable things. Oh, see, I remember now where I was going with this. So let me backtrack now. So the beauty industry is always going to survive. I myself had to make runs to purchase do-it-yourself manicure pedicure stuff. Um, just So one way or another, the beauty industry was still gaining an income during the lockdowns, right? We weren't able to go to our favorite nail salons and hairstylists, but we did it ourselves for a few months, right, ladies? Um, Now, if you don't have a thick skin, and if you are not comfortable with what you see in these different types of cameras, because I can tell you I look a little bit different when I look at myself in my computer's camera, and then the camera, the way that YouTube, I don't know if it's a resolution thing or whatnot. And so then there's you, the audience, right? You see people the way you want to see them because you have your own tastes and you know what you want to look at. And so I started to think about something I haven't researched, but I started to think about where did cosmetic surgery come from? Um, I'm wondering if it came from the same 1% of the population that has wreaked havoc on American soil and given us opioids at insane levels and degeneracy in professional sports and a lot of other bad stuff, right? And so it's going to be interesting to explore that. This is going to be new research for me, so I'm not sure how quickly I'll get to it. Maybe I'll run into something, or maybe somebody's already researched it, and I'll pick up on that information. Um, so let's walk over to the opioid stuff. Given I'm coming off of this sports um, what sports does for me. It gives me I love competition and I love winners. So that's a cool thing. But at the same time, today is the 77th anniversary of Normandy. And so it brings you back down a little bit, right? Because you remember that these young guys lost their lives. In and it probably changed America because they America lost 420,000 or a large percentage of 420,000 lives. And then so it almost feels like there has been a consistent effort to destroy the American. Um, it's almost like World War I and World War II didn't finish off the American alpha, so there's been a string of other events that have aimed to do away with the American. And Americans are still 60% of the population on American soil, but we know that half of that 60% is Marxist, including nerds, self-haters, betas, and other people that wouldn't have even jumped off the planes, the paratroopers, right into Normandy. You know you would have been too chicken. You know you wouldn't have been able to handle the task. And we've got to figure out how to get the American male back up to the level of his ancestors. And so I feel like the opioid situation was one more way to destroy the American. Because so I was pointing out yesterday that, okay, so opioids are medication for pain. Um, so as the nerd jobs increased, so did the addiction rates to pen medication. But who's being prescribed these opioids that are insanely strong? Do you guys know how opioids work? So in our bodies, we have natural opioid receptors, and they help manage pain. But when that pain is too strong, the opioid receptors are basically no match. So a pharmaceutical company funded by a single family um, came up with this extremely potent medication, this extremely potent new opioid medication. And so what they do is the opioids in the medication attach themselves to the opioid receptors in your body. And they release a feeling of euphoria, they relieve your pain, and they change the chemistry in your brain. And so it doesn't take too many doses for your body, for your brain to become addicted to this chemical substance that's altering your brain. Like even alcohol alters your brain, um, but it works in the opposite manner of opioids. So opioids relieve your pain. Alcohol slows down your brain. That's why for alcoholics, their reflexes start to go, their breathing starts to go, their heart rate starts to go. Opioids do something similar, but the addiction is off the charts, again, because they attach themselves to the receptors in your body. And that's why it doesn't take too much for people to get hooked on the substance. That's why some people, I looked it up again, I believe it's 2010 through 2014, is when the heroin stuff kind of came back. So yeah. So the second wave began in 2010 with rapid increases in overdose deaths involving heroin. So 2010 through 2013. That's when medical community realized that the emergency rooms in hospitals across the country were seeing car crash victims. And when you end up in the ER, they have to take tests and they have to question the patients if they're still alive, and they have to figure out what's going on with you. And they were charting an increase in heroin incidents. Um, but they didn't figure out until later that what was happening is people these people who were starting to abuse heroin had actually been prescribed opioid medication. And so when that medication was running out, that the addiction didn't run out with it. And so they they were moving on to something stronger. And then in 2013, the United States started to see an increase in synthetic opioid incidents. And this is your fentanyl, which is still plaguing the country. Now, the CDC actually made a correction, it seems, to the statistics because when I was working on this stuff, um, let's see if they have the last time. Yeah, so page March 17, 2021. When I was looking at this, it was the end of 2019, early 2020. And at that point, the CDC was reporting that there have been a decrease. Now the CDC website shows that drug overdose deaths increased by 5% from 2018 to 2019. I 2 years ago, they were actually reporting the opposite. They reported a decrease. And so I guess they've gone in and corrected their numbers. Now, the good news is that opioid deaths involving the prescriptions decreased by 7%. And that's because the medical community got together and told doctors, you've got to stop overprescribing this to your patients. Unfortunately, fentanyl is running on the streets pretty rampantly. So synthetic opioid deaths increased 15%. And then overall opioid deaths increased 6%, but heroin deaths decreased 6%. So uh, I'm not sure. This isn't about proposing a solution until we've got these numbers um, better, until we've got a better grasp of these numbers. I'm not sure what we can do. Again, Scott Adams has a better grip on the fentanyl situation because he says that it's coming from China. And so I an awareness, definitely realizing that the opioid fight isn't over. Um, it's tragic. It's extremely tragic, and so obviously the best way to prevent this is not to start. Um, I can tell you that I I know that rehabilitation isn't 100% foolproof. People end up white knuckling it afterwards, right? Once they through their program, once they go to their anonymous meetings, a lot of people end up white knuckling it afterwards. And so, in addiction, it doesn't go away. And so, again, tonight, this weekend, starting this conversation is about putting this back on people's radars. We need to understand that this opioid epidemic isn't over yet. We just don't know what's happening because of the lockdowns. Now, it looks like some states are redoing their COVID numbers. People were, or the medical community in some states were overestimating their COVID related um, deaths and infections. So I don't know how long we're going to have to wait to find out about the opioid stuff. And I guess George Floyd had opioids in his system, right? So maybe that put a kibosh on these statistics. So I guess we just have to wait and see. But again, the United States population hit 330 million July of 2020. So I know that opioids claiming about a million lives as of 2019 doesn't sound like a lot in the grand scheme of things. But we just because people aren't okay, so 1 million people have died. But how many people are living right now with prescription issues? Because it's not just opioids. It's cocaine. It's Xanax. It's morphine. It's oxycontin. It's whatever pills they're trying to give to young boys who don't want to be in a classroom several hours a day, 5 days a week. Um, the opioids is the largest concern in a bubble of medication problems that lead to addiction. So I'm just putting this back on the radar. I don't know how long we're going to have to wait to find out the updated numbers for like 2019, 2020, and then 2021. But again, I want to put this back on your radar, even though there isn't any new information. So next weekend, I will be back Saturday and Sunday, and I'm going to start talking about culture. So I'm going to be bringing in a couple of television examples. The main show that I'm going to base it off of is called The Fall, and it is it's not American, but it's not English. It's wherever Jamie Dornan is from. And I'll explain how I came across that show. But let's start. So, what I'm still doing is just laying down a lot of foundation. I'm putting down a lot of this stuff out there. When I eventually get into my format, it will be short segments. Ideally, I'm going to do these short segments, one segment per day on a daily basis, Monday through Friday. But some of these topics, I mean, do you want to wake up to these topics? These topics are not kid friendly. They are definitely not even PG-13. These are serious topics that I'm touching on. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, talking about it first thing in the morning. I don't know. It's part of being an adult, I guess, right? Okay, so I'm gonna start wrapping up. Today I'm gonna keep it short. Again, I got distracted with all the sports stuff that happened tonight. Looking forward to those ratings. I want to put the opioid stuff out there, put it back on people's radars. It's not over, it's still happening, it has ripple effects. Colleges have become real cesspools for this kind of degenerate behavior. So you got to really keep an eye on your kids. people are so medicated. You still have to keep an eye on your medicine cabinet. Your kids can't get into that stuff, right? Um, and again, so next Saturday, Sunday, I'm gonna get into culture, but I'm bringing in television into the fold. Um, I hope everybody enjoyed this sports-filled Sunday night. And let's talk television and culture next weekend. Saturday, Sunday, it's gonna be late night, but you can always catch the replay. Um, Hope everybody has a good week. Um, and let's get ready to have more conversations. So, thank you again for watching. Thank you again for listening. See you next week.